He cut his teeth on the Tennessee bull rings and made a name for himself on NASCAR's Winston Racing Series short track circuit, following the path of other Winston Cup stars. He moved up to NASCAR's Busch Grand National Series and became a front-runner before newly formed TriStar Motorsports Winston Cup team made him their driver last fall. In 1991, he battled with Ted Musgrave for the NASCAR Rookie of the Year honors as it became one of the tightest competitions of the year. Driving his Country Time Lemonade Oldsmobile, Bobby Hamilton combined strong qualifying positions with consistent finishes and pulled away from Musgrave with 3 top 10 finishes in the last 9 races of the season. Ladies and gentlemen, from Nashville, Tennessee, please welcome the 1991 NASCAR Rookie of the Year, Bobby Hamilton. It was a struggle that came down to the next-to-last race of the season as Davey Allison, Alan Kulwicki, and Mark Martin battled for the $30,000 bonus given by Busch Beer to the driver able to win the most pole positions during the season. Headed for Phoenix, Martin had 5 poles, Kulwicki 4, and Allison 3. One of the 4 drivers was going to win the bonus, and as it turned out, fellow Thunderbird driver Jeff Bodine won the pole, clinching the Busch bonus for Martin. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the winner of this season's $30,000 Busch Pole Award bonus, winner of 5 pole positions in 1991, Mark Martin. Last year, the Manufacturers' Championship was decided in the final race of the season at Atlanta, with Chevrolet winning its 8th straight title despite Morgan Shepherd's victory. This year, the battle again went to the wire, with Chevrolet seeking its 9th straight championship trophy. Once again, Ford gave them a run for the money. However, Chevrolet teams turned consistency into another title for the Bowtie Brigade. Winner of this year's Manufacturers Award for the 9th consecutive time is the Chevrolet Motor Division of General Motors. Without question, selecting a Mechanic of the Year from the hundreds of outstanding performances throughout the season is an incredibly difficult job. Race after race, outstanding performances by those who toil behind the headlines are noted. This year's Western Auto Mechanic of the Year changed teams early in the season and had an immediate impact on his new group of co-workers. Larry McReynolds' personality and work ethic immediately brought Davey Allison and the Robert Yates racing team to the front. After McReynolds joined the team, Allison hammered out 5 regular season victories and triumphed in the Winston, moving from 9th in the points to 3rd. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the winner of this year's Western Auto Mechanic of the Year Award, Larry McReynolds. The hunger to win has not disappeared for this former Winston Cup champion, and he considers any season with just a pair of victories not good enough. But for a team that didn't exist last year, a top 10 finish in the points, 2 wins, and 2 poles is no small accomplishment. With Roger Penske and Don Miller as co-owners of his new team, Rusty Wallace won by 1 foot at the spring race in Bristol and again found victory lane at Pocono in July. His Miller Genuine Draft Pontiac also took 3rds at Richmond, Sears Point, and Michigan to lead this new team to finish 10th in this year's Winston Cup title chase. Ladies and gentlemen, from St. Louis, Missouri, please welcome 1989 Winston Cup champion, Rusty Wallace. After finishing 10th in the final point standings last year, this driver expected great things during 1991. It began with a 2nd place finish at Rockingham in March, followed with a win at Atlanta. But 1991 would test his patience. 3 disappointing finishes in the next 4 races dropped him to 9th in the points. His determination paid off with a 2nd at Charlotte and victory at Dover. 4th in the point standings after Daytona's Pepsi 400, he encountered yet another string of bad luck, but held on to finish 9th in the Winston Cup point standings. With his Hendricks Motorsports Chevrolet team intact for 1992, he's ready to challenge for the Winston Cup championship. From Fenton, Missouri, the driver of the Kodiak Chevrolet, Ken Schrader. Finishing 20th in last year's Winston Cup point standings, this driver is making a welcome trip back to the stage. After forming his own team for 1991, he proved that the new car owner had hired the right driver.
You think Darrell just doesn't want to run out here because it's a little wet?
Well, you know, I'm drivers all like. I don't want, if it ain't perfect, I don't want to go where I always got problems.
The new team etched out 2 popular victories at North Wilkesboro and Pocono. And they claimed a second at Talladega and Phoenix, while finishing 3rd at Martinsville and in the Winston. Above all, he proved he is still a contender, can run with the best, and can do all this while getting along with his owner. Ladies and gentlemen, with an 8th place finish in the Winston Cup point standings, please welcome back the driver and owner of the Western Auto Chevrolet from Franklin, Tennessee, 3-time Winston Cup champion, Darrell Waltrip. There's no question this driver approached the 1991 season with a great deal of anticipation as he moved into the Maxwell House Coffee Ford Thunderbird fielded by Junior Johnson. The season opened on the right note, with Sterling Marlin finishing 2nd in the Daytona 500 by STP. Misfortune at Bristol in the spring set his hopes back for his first Winston Cup title. After recuperating, Marlin came back strong with a 4th at Talladega and added 11 more top 10 finishes, highlighted by poles at Daytona and Talladega in July, and a 2nd place finish at Bristol under the lights. This 1983 NASCAR Rookie of the Year accumulated more points over the second half of the season than any other driver, finishing the season with a 7th at Atlanta to wind up 7th in the Winston Cup point standings. From Columbia, Tennessee, please welcome Sterling Marlin. As the runner-up in the exciting 1990 Winston Cup title chase, Mark Martin was ready to carry his team's momentum into 1991. A 2nd in the Busch Clash started off his season, but it wasn't until the Dover race in June that the team found their groove. Starting there, Martin had top 4 finishes in the next 8 races and climbed from 9th to 3rd in the points. But the September luck that was good for some wasn't there for Martin until the final race of the season, where he dominated at Atlanta and became the season's 14th different winner. The driver, who is known for pumping iron, had a lock on finding speed all year long. 5 times Mark Martin started on the pole, setting 2 new track records, and won the Busch Pole Award. Jack Roush's Ford Thunderbird team will change from Folgers to Valvoline next year, but Mark Martin will return to challenge for the Winston Cup title. Ladies and gentlemen, the 6th place finisher in this year's Winston Cup standings from Batesville, Arkansas, Mark Martin. '87 found this driver doing odd jobs to support his promising career as a Saturday night racer in the Carolinas. That diligence paid off as Ernie Irvan's dream came true in February when he entered victory lane as the winner of the Daytona 500 by STP. This was to be a season of consistency, for this team, led by Tony Glover, was rarely out of the top 5 in the Winston Cup point standings. Irvan finished 2nd to Rusty Wallace by only 1 foot at Bristol. Then began a solid summer of putting his Kodak film Chevrolet on the pole for the Winston 500 at Talladega. Next came 4th place finishes at Dover and Sears Point, capped off by a win on the road course at Watkins Glen. After a 2nd place finish in the Heinz Southern 500 at Darlington and 4th place finishes on the short tracks at Richmond and Martinsville, Irvan proved he is now a contender anywhere the Winston Cup Series races. This year, he finishes 5th in the Winston Cup point standings, behind the wheel of the Kodak film Chevrolet, owned by Morgan McClure Racing. Ladies and gentlemen, from Modesto, California, Ernie Irvan. With Nolan Ryan throwing no-hitters, Jack Nicklaus winning golf tournaments, and Jimmy Connors electrifying crowds in the U.S. Open, it was no surprise to find this driver carrying the banner for the seniors in NASCAR Winston Cup racing. A clue of what was to come first happened in the Winston 500 at Talladega, when Harry Gant used a little creative drafting from his teammate to win on the world's fastest superspeedway. But the real thrills for the Golden Agers came when Gant went on his fall fling. He won the Southern 500 by 11 seconds over Ernie Irvan and also earned the $100,000 Winston Million bonus. Week number 2, under the lights at Richmond, saw Gant's domination continue. Week number 3, Gant wore out even the monster mile at Dover and won by a lap over Jeff Bodine. Everyone held their breath during week number 4, then watched in amazement as Gant came back to win at Martinsville. Those 4 straight victories tied Gant for the most consecutive wins in a season during the modern era of Winston Cup racing. With a final tally of 5 wins, a pair of seconds, 3 thirds, and 3 fourth-place finishes, this driver comes onto the stage tonight, finishing 4th in the Winston Cup point standings. Ladies and gentlemen, the driver of Leo Jackson's Skull Bandits Oldsmobile from Taylorsville, North Carolina, Mr. September, Harry Gant. 4 years ago, this driver stood on this stage to accept the NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year award. But he'll tell you, this is the year he and his team came of age. Davey Allison scored 5 regular season victories, plus a flag-to-flag run in the Winston. Always a threat on the super speedways, Allison won the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte, followed by Sears Point and the Michigan event in June. Add back-to-back wins late in the season at Rockingham and Phoenix, 4 additional second-place finishes, and 3 poles, proving that this team and its mature driver had arrived. Finishing a career-high 3rd in the Winston Cup point standings, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the driver of the Texaco Haviland Ford Thunderbird, fielded by Robert Yates Racing, from Hueytown, Alabama, Davey Allison. Throughout the 1991 season, Ricky Rudd chased his dream to become the first Virginian in more than 3 decades to win the Winston Cup Championship. The stage was set immediately in the second race of the season at Richmond, as Rudd finished second to Earnhardt by only half a car length. Rudd took over the points lead after his victory at Darlington and held it for 3 races until Earnhardt took back the top spot at the Winston 500 in Talladega. Known as a road course expert, Rudd didn't disappoint with a pole and a second-place finish at Sonoma, and was runner-up again at Watkins Glen. Rudd kept the battle alive with 3 top 10 finishes in September, but found himself in 3rd place after Phoenix. With his Waddell Wilson-prepared Tide Chevrolet, Ricky came back to finish 11th at Atlanta and reclaimed 2nd place, his highest points finish in his Winston Cup career. From Chesapeake, Virginia, the driver of the Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolet, ladies and gentlemen, our series runner-up, Ricky Rudd.
We've won 4 championships. We want to win 5. That's what's next. Richard Petty's won 7.
So with that goal in mind, the 1991 season began for the Goodwrench Chevrolet right where it left off in 1990. By dominating the Busch Clash in February at Daytona, Dale Earnhardt let his competition know that he and his Richard Childress-owned team were back and were strong. Their purpose this year was a 5th Winston Cup title and as many victories to back it up. Earnhardt came so close to his first Daytona 500 win, but that race was just a memory after Earnhardt dueled and barely beat Ricky Rudd to the finish line at Richmond. The players were now in place for the 1991 season. Earnhardt had to earn his next taste of champagne, which would be 6 races later at Martinsville. The black number 3 fell victim to uncharacteristic mechanical troubles at Atlanta and Darlington, while encountering on-track setbacks at Rockingham and Bristol. After the Martinsville win, it would be another 10 races before the Goodwrench Chevrolet pilot visited victory lane. But consistency became his teammate, as Dale finished 3rd in the Winston 500 and Coca-Cola 600, 2nd at Dover, 7th at Sears Point, 2nd at Pocono, 4th at Michigan, and 7th in the Pepsi 400 at Daytona. That string of solid top 10 finishes vaulted Earnhardt from 2nd in the point standings, 42 points behind, to the Winston Cup points lead, 140 ahead of Rudd. Then came Talladega. The die-hard 500 this year may become one of the legendary races in history, and Earnhardt proved up to the challenge of winning. In his lone Chevrolet, Earnhardt held off the onslaught of the Fords. More than any other race this season, Talladega may have been the event where the competition felt Earnhardt's awesome strength. With 160 points in hand, Earnhardt faced the 9-week, 9-race string of events that would weed out the pretenders from the contenders for this year's Winston Cup. Struggling through the first 6 weeks, which combined road courses, high-speed ovals, and short tracks, Dale was experiencing for the second time this season an unusual dry spell. He watched his point lead dwindle to a mere 36 points as Rudd steadily chipped away. Earnhardt came alive on the short track at North Wilkesboro and became the only man who could stop the incredible 4-race win streak of Harry Gant's. Despite an exit at Charlotte before the checkered flag fell, Earnhardt arrived at Rockingham knowing he would have to only stay ahead of Rudd and Davey Allison to clinch the title. Allison grabbed the headlines with Rockingham and Phoenix victories, while Earnhardt played it smart with 2 top 10 finishes. All that remained was for Dale to flip the switch at Atlanta, take the green flag, and become the Winston Cup champion for the 5th time in his career. There can be no question. This Richard Childress and Kirk Shelmerdine-led team have built a dynasty rarely equaled in the history of NASCAR Winston Cup racing. And Dale Earnhardt has the right stuff of which legends are made. Ladies and gentlemen, the 1991 and now 5-time Winston Cup champion, Dale Earnhardt.
Carries on the Earnhardt name. He was Rookie of the Year in 1979. And in 80 he won the Winston Cup for the very first time. In 86 and 87 Dale took on back to back. He's a man of few words, does the talking on the track. Well, he's bumming and banging and letting it roar, and the grandstand just keeps screaming for more. It don't matter where he starts, that the finish is gonna be Earnhardt. When the checkered falls, it's Earnhardt. Giving it all, it's Earnhardt. Competition knows it's Earnhardt. Everybody knows that the Goodrich crew's the best. And the man calling all the shots is Big Daddy Childress. Old Dale gets a little bit behind. They get him in and out of the pits in a record time. Every year somebody has to set the NASCAR pace. And he does it in a fast black number 3 Chevrolet. Well, he's won it 5 times, and I guarantee you, my friend, I wouldn't be surprised if he did it 5 times again. Well, it's bumming and banging and letting it roar, and the grandstand just keeps screaming for more. It don't matter where he starts, that the finish is gonna be Earnhardt. When the checkered falls, it's Earnhardt. Giving it all, it's Earnhardt. Competition knows it's Earnhardt. Well, it's bumming and banging and letting it roar, and the grandstand just keeps screaming for more. It don't matter where he starts, that the finish is gonna be Earnhardt. When the checkered falls, it's Earnhardt. Giving it all, it's Earnhardt. Competition knows it's